Hello, I am Paula Bennett and welcome to my New Zealand Herald podcast, Ask Me Anything. Now, one thing I've learned in life is it's never too late to learn something new. So on this podcast, I talk to people from all walks of life to hear how they got to where they are, get some advice and guidance on life's biggest questions. My guest this week is one of New Zealand's most well-known and successful business people. She is a CEO, board director, entrepreneur, philanthropist. She was the first female CEO of a listed company, appointed to the lead telecom at just 37 years old, and has several times been named in Fortune magazine's 50 most powerful women in international business. You, of course, know who it is, and she was recognised this week as a Dame Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit. Dame Theresa Gattung, welcome.
Good afternoon, Paula. Great to be here.
Oh, it's really nice to have you on. A couple of housekeeping. Are you ready?
Yes.
I'm allowed to ask you anything. But you don't
Yes.
have to answer.
I know.
Good,
Yep.
good. And we call it the safe space, so we just do the no judgy because, yeah, women can be quite bad at that. So we just thought lay that rule out. Okay, ease us in, quick fire questions. You love reading, don't you? And I'm looking at you now, and you've just got a massive books behind you.
Yes.
Do you mood read?
A little bit. If I'm overseas, I quite like to read books sort of set in that region.
Ah.
But I often have a fiction thing going and a non-fiction thing going, so it depends what I feel like. But, I've just been to the wonderful Auckland Writers' Festival, so I'm stocked up on books. I want to read some of the back books of some of the writers. I've read the more recent books, and, I've always got a couple of books on the go. I've just actually finished a book, so I'm right between books at the moment, which is a bit unusual.
And do you always read from cover to end, or are you someone that skips to the end sometimes?
No, I always read from cover to the end because it just ruins it if you do it any other way.
Yeah, well, see, I'm a bit controversial here. I have been known just to skip to the end, so then I don't speed read. If I'm actually really enjoying it, and they're a very clever writer, I sometimes just kind of want to know what's going to happen, so then I don't have to feel like I'm racing to get to the end. No, I know it's controversial. What would your perfect day look like?
Well, it depends whether it's a week or a weekend. A perfect day during the week would look like a combination of physical exercise, walking my dogs, swimming, Pilates, one or more of those things, and some work. I like to make things happen. I like to have projects on the go, and a nice dinner with family or friends. During the weekend, I don't like to work so much, so the weekend would involve more a later start, not being scheduled. If I'm at the beach, I would like to sort of wander to the shops or the beach and meet people and just be a bit more relaxed.
I love that. Okay, there's so much to talk to you about, but let's start with the very big news. How is Dame Theresa settling in?
Oh, well, I sort of feel like I'm just getting off cloud 9 and coming back to planet Earth. It's just been the most thrilling and the most wonderful few days.
Yeah, and it will be at the ceremony as well. I've been fortunate enough to go along and attend quite a few, and for family especially, but for the person being recognised, I just know that all of them say it's far more special than they probably thought in their heads that it would be to get that level of recognition.
Yes. I think it is really special. I know there's people who say, look, we should be a republic, there's no need for this, but however you do it, it's special to be recognised by your fellow country people, and to be acknowledged for what you've done. And as you say, makes your family and the people that have worked with you and supported you very proud.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I interviewed Dame Susan Devoy a wee while ago, and I noticed you said something a little bit similar when I was reading it on the King's birthday, and that was that. And I think it is Susan would say it's particularly with women. We don't ask men if they want to be addressed as sir, but we often start with asking women. And it's kind of the use of using Dame. Do you think you'll just kind of settle in and go with whatever people do?
Yeah, I do. But that Susan Devoy and I went to the same small girls' school, McKillop College in Rotorua. She was a year younger than me, a year behind me. And that must have been quite an environment for feisty girls. It was, had female role models. It was nuns, but they were, they were not telling us to be in our place. And so I've always admired her and thought, she's a bit like me. She sees it straight. She's stood for the same things all her life, etc. Interestingly, I hadn't thought about that Dame versus Sir across a gender lens, although I usually do think in terms of gender lens. But for me, I think it'll just be, it'll just be what emerges. I'm not going to put any formality around how I interact, that's for sure.
I don't think it's the men themselves that are insisting on Sir. I think it's that we perhaps, and let's talk about your business career, perhaps we expect women to be a little more relaxed, if you like, or, and we're just more comfortable in naturally addressing Sir instead of naturally addressing Dame. And I'm kind of making that up as I say it, by the way.
Look, you could well be right. I think we still do have an image of leaders as tall, middle class, perhaps middle-aged or older men. And we've shifted that. We've shifted it. But it's only our mother's generation that had to stop their job when they got married and had kids.
Yeah.
And look, that wasn't an issue for my mum because she just wanted to have a family. But for other women, it was heartbreaking. That is only our mums. We've actually come a long way quite fast. And sometimes, you have throwbacks to, yes, we know that we've had 3 female prime ministers. Yes, we know we've got a female minister of finance. Yes, we know we've got many female CEOs and female chairs of the largest companies in New Zealand. And yet, it's still the minority of women in visible public leadership roles. And so it does tend to default that the leader is going to be male.
Well, and that's that classic though, isn't it, Dame Theresa? It's that classic in that we mention those women because they're exceptional and they shouldn't be. It should be, if you like, the norm and not something that's almost noteworthy. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to them, but it should be part of our norm as such.
Well, that's why this was a wonderful King's Birthday list, because it honoured so many women for services to women, to governance, to women, to business. I mean, look, to be honoured alongside Dame Joan, that was special for me. She's one of the founding group of Global Women. I've been chairing Global Women for the last few years, just the most wonderful hui together up north. She wasn't at it, but the Global Woman I'm talking about. And Auntie Blair's on our board. She was honoured for services to geothermal and women. So it's wonderful that in this year there's actually been a recognition that business and philanthropy can walk hand in hand. They are not two separate things. They coexist in many of us. And it's just wonderful to see that acknowledgement of women supporting other women, because it's inspiring for younger women and girls coming through.
I mean, as you say, we have come a long way, but because it wasn't that long ago, really, that you were the CEO of Telecom, and at that time, our biggest publicly listed company, and you were only 37. Was it hard then, and do you think it wouldn't be as hard today?
Yes, it was hard then, and obviously I owe a lot to Sir Roderick Dean, who was the chair, who led the board to put me in there in the first place, and it was groundbreaking at the time. It is easier now, but it is still not easy. What's good now, though, is that, I didn't have any children, and that made it so much easier, and I think there is more acknowledgement that we want our leaders, men and women, to be able to have children, have families and lead, to look like what most people look like, not to have to sacrifice their personal life to succeed professionally. Although parliamentarians work crazy hours, I don't know how you get any chopped family time with the sort of hours that you used to work, and they still work. So yes, there are more women now, both as chairs who are appointing CEOs and as CEOs, and that makes it easier. There are more women in the executive teams. There are more women on boards. It's easier. But still, I think the penalties for women are higher. You don't get a second chance. And it's not as easy on the entrepreneurial space. Most of the funding still goes to men, not to women who are setting up businesses.
And if you make a mistake, which everybody does, right, or you don't quite get something right, it seems that it's your gender that's blamed for it, and not the fact that you're human and you're in a big job and we're all going to slip up occasionally. They genderize it really quickly.
Yeah, and I think social media's made that worse, Paula. It wasn't a thing when I was CEO, and I still copped enough abuse just in the mainstream media. So it would be terrible now if you added social media on top of that. It feels like, and I suppose I wasn't in the business world back then, but it feels like all of a sudden you kind of burst into our awareness, when you got that role. And, and I suppose your age would have played a part in that, because that is young, right, for such a big role. And, of course, your gender. And then the fact that you are full of colour and you do call a spade a spade. And so do you think all of those different things kind of compounded the kind of attention that you got? Yes. At the time I thought, well, anyone who's a CEO of telecom is going to get a lot of attention, but then my successes didn't get nearly as much attention. So I think the combination of all those things, but it wasn't all bad. It's been, at a personal level, it's been a great platform for me to get attention on things I've done since, whether they're commercial, whether they're charitable. And, of course, girls look up and they go, oh, Mummy, I could be a CEO. Mummy, I could be Prime Minister. So that visibility, I think, is important. There's no point being shrinking violets. You don't get, brownie points for that. And if you have to lead men, which in those days the executive team was all male, then you cannot be, you can't sit entirely in your feminine energy. You have to be able to be tough, and you have to be able to look like you know what you're doing. And so those things now I think is a bit more nuanced, a bit more balanced. Some more empathetic values are seen as important in leaders. So I think we've shifted a bit, but still it's harder to get to the top as a woman. It's harder to stay there. There are more penalties for perceived failure. And it's sort of it's still a more difficult balancing act of what is tough enough and what is too tough.
Yeah. You've talked about your dad playing quite a big role in you, I suppose, having the courage to step up into those sort of leadership. And he was sort of the champion of all four daughters, is the way that you've described it. I loved one of his sayings, which he used to say, when a door shuts, find a window. Was he ahead of his time?
Oh, hell yeah. He passed a few years ago, actually not of COVID, but during the COVID times. But he had only 5 sisters, no brothers, and he was a feminist. I mean, there can't be many 80-year-old men who are feminists, but my father was definitely one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I often say that my husband was probably about the first feminist I met, and he grew up with a very strong mother and all sisters. And I just think he looked through that lens of, literally women can do anything and probably better. Let's talk a bit about what you've done since then, because it's just been absolutely fascinating. I mean, your work and gender pay gaps, the work that you've done for women's organisations, so perhaps more from that professional lens as well. And I know that you and I met probably properly when I was Minister for Women, and you helped me in that role a lot. And we looked at how we could bring the corporates along in particular to look at the gender pay gaps. Do you think we're still making progress?
Yeah, I do. As you know, the 60-odd champions for change have had gender pay gap reporting as a minimum membership standard for over a year now. So I think governments of both persuasions have been lacking courage. I think the previous government had, as you know, the Council I'm on, the Council on Employment of Women, we had been urging them to do this the whole time they were in government. MB finished the work. The bill was only introduced weeks before the election. It was National Party policy to support pay transparency, but it was now a coalition, so that isn't on the table at the moment, but it should be. But the private sector is well ahead on this, and so this would be well received as long as the number of employees is not too low. Australia have just reduced the number of employees that companies must report on from 250 to 100. So if New Zealand brought in legislation that was no less than 100 employees, perhaps starting at 250, it would be well received.
And there'll be people that are listening that don't understand why it's important. But it's, if I stripped it back, I'd go, well, you can't change what you don't know. Is that a good start?
That's a really good start. The reason I think politicians don't think it's important is because they have it. We would be horrified if a woman Prime Minister was paid less than a male Prime Minister. That doesn't happen in New Zealand because what a Prime Minister is paid is transparent. And so you know that's what it is. What a Cabinet Minister is paid is transparent. That is not the case in very many other occupations. It's not the case in journalism. Women journalists often are horrified when they find out what their male contemporaries get. And so if you have that sort of opaqueness and that women don't know. And so, yes, of course, there's the law. A woman must be paid the same as men for doing exactly the same job. But what is exactly the same job? And so what all this does really is actually put the onus on employers to look, to report. I don't think we need a whole regulatory body about it the way they have in Australia. If employers have to monitor it and put it on their website, then we can all see. And women will know which organisations are working on this, take it seriously, and where it would be a good place to work and where it wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've still got a long way to go. Do you think so? I mean, I feel like we've made progress, but, we still see those occupations that are predominantly female being, not being paid the same and not being recognised the same either as many of those. I mean, if we sort of went to nursing, I've been with my mum in the hospital quite a bit lately, and what an amazing predominantly female workforce. And I just think, I think a man that worked on my car would be paid more than they are.
Well, that's back into how do you value jobs. They've got different, similar skills, but one was traditional male work and one was traditional female work. So yes, all those caring areas traditionally are underpaid because women do it, and women are expected to do it for love, not even for money in some situations. So it's an extension of women's unpaid labour in the home. And Marilyn Waring has written a lot on this. Globally, is the way we measure GDP. Does it even make sense? It doesn't count a woman's unpaid labour. So, yes, I think there is a long way to go. And I think New Zealand still is in a really good place. I mean, going right back, when women won the right to vote, we all did. It wasn't just wealthy women. It wasn't just women who owned property. And that sense of women standing together still pervades this country. We just had a wonderful hui up north, Māori woman, Pākehā woman, just going, okay, let's stand together for some of the things that need to happen. So I actually feel very positive, Paula. I think we matter more to the world than we realise. And even though we're not as green as the world thinks, and even though we know we're not the feminist utopia, one of the good things the last government did was put abortion rights into the Health Act to get it out of the nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And look what's happened in America, the rollback of reproductive freedom. So I think what's important for New Zealand women is actually to acknowledge what is working and what has been achieved and hang on to those gains. Do not let our sons and daughters just take that for granted.
You've talked a bit about the 40s being tough for you. That was when you left telecom, yes. You had a relationship breakup, it was, a leaky apartment. Talk me through that time and why you think it's important to share it, because, you seem and you are formidable, intelligent and just this fabulous person. But I think it's equally important that we know that we all go through ups and downs and we can get through them.
Gosh, you've done good research, Paula. Yeah, my 40s was definitely an unhappy decade, and 4 years in particular, between about the age of 42 and 46, were the most difficult time in my life. So it was difficult because John and I had separated. I was alone. It was difficult because I hadn't planned for life past telecom. It was difficult because telecom ended not in the way that I saw or would have planned for. And my biggest financial asset was my lovely apartment in Wellington, which was part of a leaky building. And so that was difficult because I was unmoored and everyone else just carried on with their life. And so I felt really lonely and I didn't know what to do next. I went overseas with a good friend. I thought I might live overseas. But when I came back to New Zealand, I thought, no, I really love this country. I really want my bones buried here. It's my Taringa Waiwai. So I decided I had to create a life that was based around New Zealand, but ability to go overseas. Of course, I had some great friends. My dear friend Margaret Dukas subsequently passed away a few years ago. She was an absolute stalwart, and I got going again, really. First of all, on the charitable side, she took me up to the SPCA and we took on board the project to turn the old Fever Hospital, which was derelict, into the new SPCA Centre in Wellington. And that took me, I was working hard on that for months and months, which ended up being years and years. And that took me out of myself and doing something for somebody else, in this case animals, but also for the community, really was fantastic. And then opportunities started to come and I started to say yes, and some worked out and some didn't. But gradually I put a portfolio life together. And actually by the time I was 50, my 50th party, which I had in Queenstown, I felt very happy. But I started the early 40s very stressed. I went through a very difficult period. And then after 50, like at 50, I became an entrepreneur because I met Celia Robinson. I shifted to Auckland. I met Celia Robinson. And then the last 13 years have been fantastic, and they've all been about being an entrepreneur and then becoming a philanthropist more generally, because I've given money to charities, direct debit from my pay since I was 21. But doing that with my sister, setting up the Gattung Foundation and helping women in, systemic ways, like funding the Chair of Women Entrepreneurship at Auckland University, but also in personal ways through investing in their businesses or mentoring them, etc.
We're going to take a break and then we're going to talk about the new dating app, which I'm very excited to talk about. But before I get there, I just want to, hey, I'm not short of good ideas. My staff used to say you have 15 a day and one of them might be something we should keep talking about. But you do more than that. I mean, my food bag, the people who've been around, we'll get into the dating app more, but I suppose it just impresses me so much that you see a gap or you need something done, the SPCA, but then you actually have the fortitude to make a plan and then work towards it and do it. Are we teaching that enough?
That's a very good question. Although I struggled in my 40s, I think that builds resilience, and I do believe that everybody is going to have a tough time in life at some point. And for some people it's early on, they get heartbreak early on. For some people it's later, but no one goes through life unscathed, right? No one's life is just a rose petals laid in their path. It's just that some people suffer publicly and some people suffer privately. And so some people's challenges are evident and some people's are not. And if you want to live in New Zealand, actually you have to be the same person when you're on top of the wheel and you're under the wheel, because it doesn't go too well if you behave differently as a dame than you would when you weren't a dame. So I can't remember the question you asked me, Paula.
Well, I suppose the question really, you did touch on it, but are we building that resilience enough?
Oh, yeah.
Or more? I don't know if it's just resilience, because you're not just resilient, that's a given. It's more that you've got that entrepreneur that you can see a gap in the market, you can then actually look at what the trends are. And I admire it greatly. I mean, I've been in public service and then I've worked for other people, and I always think that if I had my time again, I would even be a bit more gutsy and do it myself.
I need to say that because someone today said to me that I sit comfortably in the space of ambiguity, and I do. I sit comfortably in the space of ambiguity. I trust that is going to work out, and I just put one foot in front of the other, and I go, this looks like the next thing to do, and I surround myself with people who are smarter than me, who have skills I don't have, and that means I can multiply my efforts. And then I have my wonderful assistant, Chris Woodward, who's worked with me for 30 years. So it's the work of two women you're seeing, not just one woman the whole time. But, yeah, I enroll other people, and then I trust. I do not try and control things at a detailed level. That is anathema to anything flourishing. You have to get great people and you have to let them have their own agency, and then you are navigating, charting, guiding, but you are not the producer and the director. You have to actually do this collaboratively, because everything in an entrepreneur, you've got to pivot all the time. Everything is changing all the time. None of us saw the pandemic. None of us saw what would come after that. The pandemic was helpful for Tend. We had already set up a health business online. So it was fantastic for that. For one or two of my other businesses, it was dire. So it's like, actually, Bill Gates says something I think is also true, which is to generate wealth, you've got to concentrate, but to keep wealth, you have to diversify. And so I think that's also a thing. I'm naturally curious about lots of things. did extra subjects at school. So I'm never going to be someone who's only in one sector. I've got fingers in many pies because I'm interested in many different things.
Well, on that, we have to take a short break and then we need to talk about one of those things, which is the new dating app, which I'm very excited about. All right, Dame Theresa, let's talk about your latest venture, a dating app. You launched Compatico earlier this year, and you've always been very entrepreneurial, as we've already said, so it would be no surprise that you found a problem and you've decided to fix it. So let's talk about that. I mean, why is Compatico different to what else is out there? I mean, and was it based on personal experience?
It's based on personal experience. A few years ago, I thought, look, I'd like to try and find a partner again. I've been so busy with work a long time, and I looked at the alternatives, and they were dire. I was never going to go on Bumble or Tinder because I'm well known. But a lot of people don't want to do it. It's not safe for women, and even men. It's like if you don't want to meet your client on there or your partner, or it's like. New Zealand's a very small place. So a lot of people really don't want to do the apps. There weren't very many other options. I went on to another platform that said it was matching, and they said, we don't take very many women over the age of 55, but, we might make an exception for you. So it was pretty dire. Anyway, I joined that service.
Do they take men over 55?
They do. Of course they do, yes. Anyway, it wasn't elegant. Nothing really bad happened to me, but all the things that happen to women, getting stood up as I walked into the restaurant, swapping photos and then never hearing from the person again, just all those things that, it's dating through apps in the last decade has become so transactional. The whole swipe culture, it's the antithesis of love. It's like it's worse than a second-hand car. And yet it's love. And so it actually isn't an app. It is optimized for mobile, so you can access a mobile phone, but you go to the website, you can either just book for a 15-minute free Zoom call, or you can do the short questionnaire and you can sign up. And then there are 2 levels of service, but it's a matchmaking agency at its essence, where you get a personalised matchmaker to actually work with you through the journey, or you can join as a gold. You go in the singles community, you get invited to the events that we have, and you're available for matching with the platinums. So we have had tremendous people coming in. It's like and it's a lovely service. You can pay to have your photo. You don't have to have a photo, and the only people who see the photo are the people you're going to be matched with. It's not public. Your profile's not public. After with the matchmaker, they run up your profile, you approve it, and then it's used only for matching people within the community. It's not public at all. You don't have to have a photo, but if you have a photo, you have it done with our photographer and our style. So no photos of men and fish, no heavily retouched photos, no 10-year-old photos. And the experience of being with Lisa and having your hair and makeup done and photo taken is wonderful. So we've got plenty of dating going on, no marriage proposals yet, but it's a lovely experience. It's an elegant experience. That's, the first one to achieve is actually do this properly. Do this in an adult way. Don't turn it into a yesterday's fish and chip wrapper culture. That's what's happened to dating on the apps.
And so the matching part, so as you say, I'm either going to do an interview and or a survey, and in that I might be telling you a bit about me, and then equally kind of what I'm looking for or what I think I'm looking for. And then are you sort of are you tested a bit in that?
That depends. So, yes, you fill out the Compatico to the questionnaire, and it's an hour Zoom call, and, yes, it is about you. Some people cry with our matchmakers in that call, Paula, because they're processing whatever they've gone through. It was really important to me because I could see from my own dating experience that we needed to have psychologists involved. Many of the matchmakers have a background as psychologists, and we have a psychologist as part of our partnership, as one of my equity partners, Tiaru Talks. So she's available to be a psychologist, and we have other psychologists as well, so people have a choice. But she's also involved in the whole in the Compatico and the questions and how they're asked. And she writes a column in the paper. We share, we're trying to actually improve the quality of relationships altogether, really. So she's sharing what she's learned. And so some people do need a bit of, we have referred people who want it to psychologists within our sort of whānau, because some people do need a bit of help processing what's happened in their first act.
And do you think there's someone for everyone?
Yeah, I do think there's someone for everyone.
Yeah.
I do think there's someone for everyone, yeah.
Because I was thinking, there must be the odd ones, though, that the psychologists think, well, either you're not ready or you're sort of visiting crazy town right now and we might just need to slow it all down a bit.
We haven't had anyone like at that extreme.
Okay.
But if we felt on a sort of a 15-minute Zoom call, which is free, complimentary, that someone actually just wasn't a good fit, we wouldn't take their money. We would try not to put ourselves in a situation. But everybody must do a Ministry of Justice check, and we have had some people fail the Ministry of Justice check.
Oh, do you? And do you have standards? Like,
absolutely, everyone has to do the MOJ check. So look, I can't breach confidentiality, but yes, there have been some people who haven't become members because of what's surfaced in that process. So
then if the psychologists make a match, then do you just start by corresponding with that person? Would the two of you make the decision as to whether or when you met face-to-face and things like that?
So say the matchmaker, Cindy Mitchell is the head of matchmaking, say she's got a platinum client, could be man, could be woman, shows the profile of the other person, then the other person is asked, do you want to go on a date with this person? They say yes. Then both parties are given each other's mobile numbers and they decide. It's not all Aucklanders with Aucklanders. We've got a lot of people from the Bay of Plenty, from Wellington, from Christchurch. The first date was a guy from Christchurch and a woman from Auckland. He flew to Auckland. The first people who signed up were a woman from Wellington and a man from Tauranga. So it's not all actually all in Auckland, or the matchmakers are all in Auckland. We've just got started with a Wellington matchmaker in the last couple of weeks. So we've just expanded to Wellington with a matchmaker and a photographer. And that differs too, because in some services it's the man who has to initiate, and others it's the woman. We basically treat people like adults. You both said you want to go on a date with this person. You've seen their profile. Usually the profile has a photo. Most people do get a photo done. And so then they go on a date, and then we encourage them to do 2 dates. Not everyone sticks with that, but, people can be nervous. Can't always tell, just in one date. We don't really recommend 20-minute coffee dates. It's like a dinner date, and then for second or third dates, doing some activity, spending a bit more time together. And Cindy will check in after that date and say, how did it go? Get both people's perspective, coach them, encourage them. But they're acting like adults. They tell each other if it's not going to be a thing, or if they want to go on a second date. And at some point, we will drop out of the process, but and carry on matching other people. But so far, we've people are a few dates in, but no one has yet said, okay, right, I'm in a relationship, therefore I don't need you anymore.
Interesting. And so, have you been using the service yourself?
I think you should ask that. I've been expecting someone to ask me that all week. Well, no, how can I put this? Obviously, when I set this up, I thought there was a possibility I might meet someone through it. That hasn't happened to date. That is not my highest priority. I'm not on any other services. I've told the world that I'm single, so that has actually brought other things along, and I don't really want to say more about that at the moment. So, yeah.
I had some dreadful dates when I was single as a MP. Because I was single for a long time. I was single for like about 25 years. And I kind of went through that stage and went, you know what, I think it would be nice to meet someone. So I decided that what I'd do is for 12 months, I would say yes to a date. Like that actually I was potentially the problem because I'd kind of got so independent and fixated. And look, I had fun and there was no terrible experiences, but there were some not as good ones.
Yes.
It's harder when you've got a public profile.
It is harder when you've got a public profile. It definitely is. But my experience of dating is that, that puts some men off. but equally it makes some being keener. And, if you and I had a public profile, that's an issue, but someone else could have something else. It's like, it's just, what is the perfect... Anybody who is second or third time around is dealing with a very different world than when I first partnered, at 21 in university. And so you're dealing with your own baggage, as you say. Are we fixated? That's definitely an issue as you get into your 50s and 60s. Are you as open as you once were? And also there are real things like busy lives, children, grandchildren. There are real things to negotiate. So people move at their own pace. There's no pressure on the timing of this. But, boy, there is a need for this service. And, of course, it exists overseas. Matchmaking agencies are really common elsewhere. They just have not really been established in New Zealand.
So have you got any tips for people on the dating scene, if you like? I mean, you've said make it longer than just a quick coffee.
Yes.
And I've taken that on board. Not that I'm single, but I always...
What you said, actually push yourself out of your comfort zone. It's like, so for example, for me, I found that using another service, they were always like matching me with businessmen. But that, my first partner was an artist. And it's like, so I'm a very creative person. My partner might be an architect. Like it's so be open and give people a chance. Be open, trust the process. And if you think you might have baggage, book a session with a psychologist. It's only a couple of $100 and it might be life-changing.
And maybe go in looking for the things that you've got in common instead of going in looking for the things that you don't and the things you don't like about them. Because I think we sometimes do that when we've been single for a little while. It's like, well, this is my criteria and I'm just going to go in there with my top 5 questions. And, and if you don't get 4 right, then that's it. Whereas if we actually took some time... We sort of
like a business project. This is non-negotiable and that and that. And there might be a few non-negotiable things like, smoking or whatever. But, chuck the checklist and just see how you feel. And, and give yourself a break. Like, you don't want to be judged and people don't want to be judged. And, I always went on a second date. I thought there was any potential. I never really... Only occasionally did I say no after a first date.
Yeah, good on you. Hey, let's just. I want to touch briefly, if I can, on the Gattung Foundation and the work that you do in giving back. And I mean, you said you've always done it. So do you why? Because actually, that's not New Zealanders. You know what I mean? I think we do. Well, we certainly do more now, and I know I do. But I wouldn't have thought of it when I was 21. But you were saying that went right back for then, and your foundation's 2 years in, right? So how's that going?
Well, it's going brilliantly, and most of the mahi is done by my wonderful sister, Angela Gattung, but it came from my Catholic background, our Catholic background. So although, honestly, I would cringe now, at school, the boxes went round saying, this is for poor children in Africa. Like, though we would cringe, the idea that actually of giving, of actually sharing what you had, of first of all appreciating what you had, realising everyone else didn't have it, and then sharing it in some way. So I think that stuck with me. I've always thought energy needs to be in motion and money is just energy. So I've always been not tight about money. I've always felt that my father gave us such good money values. He always believed that you could create more. There's plenty. I think sometimes people think of money as a scarce pot. And if you have more, I have less. I don't think about it like that. I think there's plenty of room for there to be enough for all of us. So that's part of it, the wanting to keep it in circulation. But yes, so from the age of 21, I supported SPCA and women's causes, and I still do. In fact, I think I've been the same person all my life. It's just that the world's caught up with me. So during lockdown, I thought about, okay, I've got a bit more time, and how can I make a bigger contribution? Because all my career I've just been giving money, but not had much time to make 2 and 2 = 5. And I'd seen in my work over those years with the SPCA how powerful that could be. And so I, over time, convinced my sister. She took a bit of convincing because she was an educationist, had been a principal for many years, understood the education sector really well. And she had helped set up Ko Tuitui Ki Papakura, a charity in Papakura, and grown that. So she knew the other side of it. And so it's like I knew one side and she knew the other side, and we shared some of the same passions. And so we basically set up the foundation around that. It's just the two of us, and Chris Wood was our third trustee. We don't have a bit. We lay out clearly on the website the things that the causes that we're about, and then she does all the due diligence, and then we decide quite quickly, and then we get on with it. And so we've done. We don't have any geographical boundaries. We support projects and people and things throughout New Zealand, and it's very varied. So it's everything from we started to pay a salary for Sarah Page, the Kindness Collective.
Oh, nice.
And in the 2 years we've been paying her a part salary, as you know, that has grown. She's now got a big warehouse. She's grown from a small West Auckland charity to be throughout New Zealand. So just enabling her to do what she is doing and scale up. We sometimes buy physical things. We bought an ambulance for this area, this Western Bay of Plenty area, because we wanted to honour the fact that our father had been looked after by the ambulance so many times, and they needed another ambulance. We bought a proper animal truck for the far north, because that's driving huge distances, and so their van had basically worn out. And so sometimes it's a physical thing. Sometimes we simply sponsor things that are already happening, like scholarships at Minimal Foundation or First Foundation, or we set up scholarships with the First Foundation at our old school in Rotorua, which got amalgamated with the boys' school, but we support female scholars. Sometimes we co-create programs, like with Topi Toa, we co-created a program to inspire girls in their final years of school who live in South Auckland. They come for a day and they get inspired about possibility. And one of the teachers told me that the second time she brought girls, she said, well, the first time only one of those girls was going to go to university, and after this one day, they all decided to go to university except for one. And I said, wow, just from this one-day program? And she said, just from the one-day program. So sometimes quite straightforward things can have a huge impact. More significant, perhaps, in terms of the country is the work we've been doing, and she's been doing with Shannon on the East Coast, which has started with one kura, girls in Te Reo immersion, and it's now many kura, who are learning robotics. We're funding them to learn robotics. And so can you imagine how much better off this country would be if girls from the economically challenged region, the geographically challenged region, were world-class at robotics? It's like if we could harness all the talent. So, look, I'm quite unapologetic about that we fund girls. We do sometimes fund boys as well, sort of incidentally, but our focus is on girls. There's plenty of male philanthropists who can fund boys, because we're trying to actually give girls a little bit more of a leg up, for what we enjoyed, the life that we've been able to have.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's extraordinary and is making a difference. I've been lucky enough to see some of the work that you've done over the years, and I know firsthand when you hear those stories from those girls and young women as to the difference, because if they can't see it, then they can't do it and they can't dream it, and giving them that kind of hope. So I, on behalf of New Zealand, acknowledge you being acknowledged this week and getting your damehood, because I think it's very well deserved, and this country's better off for having you and your sister and all the others that are around you that support these causes. So thank you. Thank you. Well, now you get to ask me something, because that's the way the podcast goes. Is it's you get one shot at. This is my least favourite bit, because I just never know what someone's going to ask.
I've been thinking about what I would ask you, and I'm going to ask you perhaps the obvious question, because I decided not to ask you a Patsy question, because that wouldn't be me, wouldn't be you. But it would be fantastic to have a woman Mayor of Auckland. Are you considering it running?
Oh, that's interesting, eh? And there is something in leadership and change that still excites me, I think, and how you do use the skills and talents that you've acquired over a period of time. I'm really fortunate in that I put my hand up and have just started in the role as chair of Farmac, and I must admit it's quite beautifully consuming me. So I still have a lot of other things going on. I'm still doing my work at Bailey's. So in the context convinced of me giving that 100% because, man, I can make a huge difference in that organisation and for pretty much all New Zealand, right? Because if we're not actually needing medicines, then we know someone who is. And when you're watching people do a Give a Little page, there's got to be a better way in this beautiful little country of ours. So at the moment, I'm kind of really focused on that, and it's taking a lot. And I think just park. Well, you sort of said before, you can, you don't have to be in every detail, and you don't have to have made every decision. You can kind of let something breathe for a while as well.
I agree. Look, Pharmac is so worthy. I'm just such a huge supporter of Rachel Smalley's and what she's, done to bring this to light. And you are doing noble work there for sure, Paula.
Well, wasn't it great to see her recognised on King's birthday as well? And I imagine it would have meant a lot to her to have had that recognition from government on behalf of New Zealanders. So I was very pleased for her, that's for sure. Well, Dame Theresa Gattung, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me today. Where can people find you if they want to find out more? They can go and look at the website if they want to get on the old dating.
They can go to Compatico.co.nz.
Good.
Or they can go to gettingfoundation.nz for the Gattung Foundation, or they can go to my own website, theresagattung.com. There's many ways to connect with some of the things that I'm working on.
Oh, well, go and do it, I say to everyone, because that's it for another episode of Ask Me Anything. You can get in touch with me by emailing askpaula@nzherald.co.nz. Feel free to send me through your questions, your thoughts. I'd always love to hear from you. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram or LinkedIn. Just make sure you follow Ask Me Anything on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paula Bennett. Ask Me Anything. Goodbye.